So how do we get started with sustainability? Well, first of all, we have to have a definition. So I'm sure you've all heard that sustainability is about people, planet and profit. And I like to say responsible profit rather than just profit. But the definition that came about in the 1980s was that sustainable development should be something that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And Wales has really adopted this. They've got a sort of 7 generations idea. So thinking about what are the impacts of our future actions. And the Sustainable Development Goals kind of give us an idea of all of the things that that sustainability cover. And it should be said that if you have too much choice is overwhelming. So you could look at this and go, oh, crikey. But the thing about the Sustainable Development Goals is you pick the ones that are relevant to you. So where can you have action and where to begin? So this is what we're going to look at now. And this is really important. So a policy and an action plan are a great place to get started because it helps you then to stay focused and not go off on every tangent when someone says, oh, is this sustainable? And like, we're sticking to the plan. You don't need to be an expert to get started, but you do need commitment and support within your organisation. One lone green champion will only get so far. And to have most impact, looking at how it becomes part of everyone's job roles is much more impactful because you need everyone to be thinking this is part of my job, not just my targets are sales. You know, how can you embed it? And don't get bogged down with everything. Look where those big easy wins are or those real big impact areas. It's really important that you get traction at the beginning because it can be disheartening if you're trying to address something tricky and you can't do it. And then as human beings, we're wired for change and for action and short-term wins. So getting some easy wins into your plan is really important. So an easy win could be plastics. So it depends on what sector you're in. Alan, we were talking about this before. On a stage, removing plastics in a field is very difficult. But if you're in a venue like this, you don't need to be selling bottled water. Yeah. So that, plastics is a lot of the starting point for people. Something like, printing double-sided, easy wins, just things to get started with. So how do we get started? So a favourite phrase from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, 80% of waste is created at the design phase. So rather than us worrying about the right kinds of bins, we need to be thinking about what are the materials that we're creating at the outset? How are we designing our event to create, and what impacts are we creating at that point? Because it's easier to make change there than trying to, get people to put things in the right bin. So anyone who works with clients, starting from the beginning and saying, okay, look, this is what we're planning to do, or how can we address sustainability with this event? I get brought in quite often by corporate organisations who are like, oh, the client's decided this event needs to be sustainable. We're 2 months out, what can you do? Yes, and then we're just, doing this round the sides and saying, well, next time you could do this. So starting from the beginning. And quite often with bigger brands, and if you're working with, with wines and things, you might have already key policies and things that you can then attach to your events. Because quite often, people will have environmental targets, but somehow the event sector or the events that are aligned with them don't seem to know about them. So kind of joining it up, looking for where you can say, look, hey, we've already agreed that we're trying to do this. Let's bring this into our event. And if you're working with clients, having some kind of workshop or just sitting around and saying, okay, what are the things, what are the priorities, what matters to you, and kind of really bringing that from the beginning. So policies, we'll talk a bit about those. when I worked with Google Next, I was auditing their event, but they had started off and they said, we've got a zero waste policy. So the event designers had to think, how do we design a zero waste event? So it meant that everything that they were planning came from this, how do we create a zero waste event? Which meant they had a lot less stuff and they were hiring things in. So a principle from behaviour change is the idea that you are a choice architect. And this means that you as the event organiser control how people experience the event. So the layout, the sequencing and the defaults that we give our audiences will affect how they behave. So, for example, today, if when you were given your cups and they were all takeaway cups, that would be an example of the venue controlling the choice architecture. So the fact they've given everything in reusables means that you as the audience don't have to make a decision about whether you drink out of a plastic bottle or not, because the decision's been made for you. So the more you can do for your audience, the better, because it's a lot harder for people to make decisions and make the right choice. So in behaviour change, we talk about the path of least resistance. So making things as easy as possible for people to make those choices. And I'll talk more about this later. So we're going to think about the impacts that your events might have. And probably, given you're all in very different sectors, except for the wine people, they'll be different. And that's okay. And the thing about impacts is it's not one size fits all, and you're going to find the things that are most relevant to you. So we've got some funky things going on here. So just have a quick think about, we don't have a piece of paper now, if you've got any spare paper or a book, what do you think are some of the key impacts for your events? Like, they might be all of these, but maybe just pick 5 maximum that you think impacts for your events, and we're going to do a little exercise afterwards. So what we want to do with these is we want to identify those big impacts and those easy wins. So how do we do that? So this is an easy activity to do, and there's an option to do it on your checklist, hopefully, once you fill those in. So rate on a score of 1 to 5 how important that impact is for your organisation. So, or how big you think it is. So it might be that you work in a natural environment, so actually biodiversity is really important, or packaging might be something that your clients all talk about. So just give them a score of 1 being least important and 5 being most important. Or even if it's important to you, like what's, environmentally, what's one that really kind of gets your goat and you're like, oh yeah. So on a 1 to 5. And then when you've got that, rate on a score of 1 to 5 in terms of your level of control. So how easy is it for you to make change? So 1 being hard and 5 being easy. And this is just to your best of your knowledge right now.
I think about this stuff quite a lot. Can I ask you about a specific thing? So there's I work a lot with wine, and whilst I do use some wine from the UK, a lot of wine obviously comes from overseas, and also comes in glass bottles a lot of the time. So I've been looking at alternative formats, so I work with some bag-in-box stuff, particularly good for events, but there's some wine that has to be in a glass bottle, and I think there isn't really a compromise.
So that's where you have less control. So
okay, cool.
So this is where kind of we let go of the things that we have no control over. So
okay, this is good.
So let go. So if you've got no control, and that's something that someone else has got more control over, that's a 2 or a 1 or a 2.
Okay.
Importing wines from, you might have control over that, but it might be a 3.
Yeah. Well, I've been working with regional traders for the last year and a half to try and bring more and more wine by sale. So I feel like I'm trying to do as much as I can. But
so maybe that's a 3 or a 4.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
But what you should get from that is you should have 2 numbers. So add those 2 numbers together for each item, and that will give you a total score. And the total score are the ones that you get started with first.
So the first one,
Yeah.
regardless of importance for the organisation, was 1 low, what was 1 high?
1's low and 5's high.
Okay, and on the second one, 5.
5. So where you've got no control, it's 1. Where you've got lots of control, it's 5.
Okay.
So then it should be that the items with the highest score are the things that you've got the most control and then the most important, and those are the things that you would focus on.
I've got a 10, that's a...
I know.
What's your 10 for?
Local community, but I'm not sure, because it's an events company I'm saying that. I'm trying to work out if it's, I'm trying to just choose one event that I'm thinking of that I want to do. So it's like a community play day where I'm really not sure, like with local community, what would you say that means?
So in terms of that, in terms of impacts, that would be how you're impacting on the local community. So that might be, so for putting on events in Cornwall, it might be that actually you're bringing lots of money for the local community. It might be that if it's in somewhere and there's all the traffic going past, like say Glastonbury, anyone who lives in Glastonbury would say Glastonbury Festival negatively impacts the local community. So it's more about how you impact on them. But equally, people might say you'd get a job. They give lots of jobs.
Yeah.
So with those in mind, does everyone just give us the top one?
So local community, I'd have so it'd be like a free event in theory for families.
And what's your next one down after that?
9, which was local environment and habitat.
Okay.
So would negatively be impacting then habitat.
Okay.
Would be making use of it, I suppose.
Bethany?
Weirdly, a carbon footprint's come out top.
Okay.
I think I might have done that weirdly, but I know that kind of when I did the search before, my travel one was really, really illuminating, because for the organisation that's mega, but actually in terms of control, we have no control. I have no control how you all came today.
Yeah.
So that was quite a freeing one for me to be like,
Nothing.
can't control it, so actually let's focus on something else that we can control.
But I wonder whether you could.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about it. We'll go to the different areas. So